You don't expect your neighbor to be the thing you fear most. Not when you move in with the person you love. Not when the rent is cheap and the place is quiet. But sometimes, the thing you're scared of doesn't come from outside the door, it lives right above you. It was the first apartment my boyfriend and I got together. A one-bedroom in a quiet building tucked behind an old cemetery in the oldest part of the city. The rent was almost too good to be true, and the landlord, a cheerful woman in her 60s named Carol, promised it was just because nobody wanted to live near the dead. That didn't bother us. In fact, I kind of liked it. Peaceful, low traffic, no noisy bars, no late-night college parties. Just quiet, at least at first. We moved in during early spring. Everything felt fresh, new furniture, home-cooked dinners, the excitement of sharing a space that was just ours. I still remember the creak of the floorboards, the soft hum of the fridge, and how sunlight would filter in through the kitchen window in the mornings. The building was small. Just 4 units, 2 on the top floor, 2 on the bottom. We were in 1B. The guy above us, Unit 2B, was already there. We never saw him when we moved in. Carol just said, "He's quiet. Keeps to himself." At first, that was true, but that didn't last. The first strange thing started small. We heard footsteps at odd hours. Not normal footsteps pacing. Relentless. Back and forth across the ceiling, late at night. Sometimes starting at 2 or 3 a.m., lasting for hours. Then came the thumping. Like someone dropping heavy boxes over and over. The kind of impact that shakes the picture frames. We tried to ignore it. We told ourselves maybe he worked nights. Maybe he had insomnia. Then, one night while brushing my teeth, I heard him laughing. Loud, high-pitched, talking to himself. Through the ceiling. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone chilled me. It didn't sound like a conversation. It sounded like someone arguing with no one. Things escalated fast. We started hearing banging on the floor above us, always at the same time. 3:11 a.m. on the dot, for a week straight. One night, my boyfriend banged back. Big mistake. Within seconds, we heard him stomp to the floor above our living room and start yelling full voice, guttural, screaming like he was trying to peel the words from his throat. We froze. We didn't bang again. The next day, I saw him for the first time. I was taking out the trash when I heard a door creak above me. I glanced up just as he stepped out onto the upstairs landing. He was tall, gaunt, wearing a dirty white undershirt and sweatpants that sagged too low. His hair was wild, like it hadn't been cut in years, and his eyes, sunken, hollow, locked on me with this unsettling intensity. He didn't say anything, didn't blink, just stared. I gave him a tight smile and turned quickly. As I walked back inside, I heard him mutter something behind me. It was soft, but I swear I heard him say, "They're watching you too." I told my boyfriend that night. He brushed it off, said the guy was probably mentally ill. Don't engage. Don't give him a reason. But the noises continued. Got worse. Dragging sounds across the floor. Thuds like furniture tipping over. And the talking always to himself. Sometimes laughing. Sometimes sobbing. Once, I heard him whispering what sounded like my name. I turned off the lights and just sat in the dark, holding my breath. Then came the night he banged on our front door. It was almost 4 a.m. We were asleep when it started, boom, 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 like fists slamming hard and fast. My boyfriend jumped out of bed, grabbed the baseball bat we kept by the dresser. I followed, heart pounding, as he peered through the peephole. It was him, standing there, barefoot, panting. He was muttering something through the door. We couldn't make it out. Then he screamed. Not words. Just this long, piercing wail that sounded less like a person and more like something broken. Then silence. We didn't open the door. He stood there for 5 more minutes before turning and walking back upstairs. We called Carol the next morning. She seemed surprised. Said he'd lived there for 5 years with no issues. Claimed he was off, sure, but quiet. Said she talked to him. The next few days were peaceful. Too peaceful. No footsteps. No voices. No sounds at all. Then, one evening, we came home to find a note slipped under our door. It wasn't written. It was typed. Block letters. No name. It said, "I know what you did. They tell me everything." We moved out 2 weeks later. Started looking for other places immediately. Carol tried to calm us down, offered to lower the rent, but nothing could convince me to stay. The final straw happened the night before we left. We were packing late, boxes everywhere. Around 1 a.m., we heard the ceiling creak, just once. Then the hallway. Slow footsteps. Getting closer to our door. We went still. And then, Tap, tap, not knocking, tapping, soft, rhythmic, then a voice, right outside the door. I can still hear you breathing. My boyfriend lunged for the door, yelling that he'd call the police. But when he opened it, no one was there. Just the quiet hall, and a small, torn piece of paper on the welcome mat. No message, just an eye drawn in black ink. We left before dawn the next morning. We didn't tell Carol. We just left. It's been 3 years. We live across town now. Different apartment, top floor. But every so often, I wake in the middle of the night and swear I hear footsteps above me. Dragging, pacing. And once, I thought I heard laughter. I don't live near a cemetery anymore. But something still feels buried above me. We lived 2 feet from each other, separated only by a wall. He always waved, always smiled. And somehow, I still didn't hear the screams. This story is hard for me to tell, not because of what happened, but because of what didn't. Because I didn't act. I didn't check. I didn't listen hard enough. It happened a few years ago when it was just me and my daughter, Sophie. I'd gotten out of a bad relationship and finally scraped together enough to rent a modest townhouse in a quiet neighborhood, cheap, a little worn down, but safe. Or so I thought. We shared a wall with a man named Harold, late 60s, retired, thin, pale, always wearing a tucked-in plaid shirt, even on the hottest days. He reminded me of my grandpa, gentle and polite. Every morning he watered his plants, fed the stray cats, and nodded a soft hello if you passed by. Sometimes he'd leave small treats for Sophie, peppermints, or those butterscotch candies that only old folks seem to have an endless supply. He lived alone. No family visited. No friends stopped by. But he was kind. And that's what makes what happened so hard to swallow. I remember the day clearly. It was a Monday in late spring. I'd picked Sophie up from school, and we were winding down for the evening. She was coloring on the floor while I prepped dinner. Around 7:30, I heard a thud next door. Not loud. Not alarming. Just a dull noise, like a heavy book falling. Then a few minutes later, a strange dragging sound. Again, I didn't think much of it. The walls were thin, and sometimes Harold moved furniture around late at night. It was odd, but never disturbing. I finished cooking, tucked Sophie into bed, and sat on the couch, half watching a show, half scrolling on my phone. Around 10 p.m., I heard something that made me pause. Tap, tap, tap. 3 quick knocks. Then a pause. They were faint, like knuckles brushing against drywall. I turned off the TV and listened. Nothing. Then, just as I stood to check the door, nothing again. Just silence. I shrugged it off. I figured maybe Harold had dropped something. Maybe he knocked something over. Maybe it was nothing. That night, I went to sleep without locking the deadbolt. I almost always double-checked it, but I was tired. Distracted. The next morning, Sophie asked, "Mommy, why was the cat crying?" I blinked. "What cat? Sweetheart?" She pointed toward the shared wall. "I heard it last night. It kept making weird noises, like it was hurt." My blood went cold. Harold had a few strays he fed, but he never brought them inside. And what Sophie thought were cat sounds. They might not have been cats at all. I didn't call the police. I didn't knock. I didn't even mention it when I saw Harold's porch light still on at noon, which was strange, because he always turned it off after sunrise. That day was long. Guilt gnawed at me, but life kept moving. Work, errands, a spilled juice box, a scraped knee. By the time dinner rolled around again, I noticed something else. The same porch light was still on, but his blinds were closed. They were never closed. That night, around midnight, I woke up from a dead sleep. I didn't know why at first. Then I realized it was too quiet. No hum of the neighbor's old radio. No shuffle of his slippers on wood floors. No tap of his cane against the tile. And that's when I heard it again. Thump. A single, heavy knock on the shared wall. My heart dropped. I stared at the wall, half expecting to hear more. But nothing came. The silence that followed was deeper than any sound. The next morning, I knocked. No answer. I tried again, louder this time. "Harold?" Still nothing. I bent down to peek under the door. The gap was dark. No movement. The porch light was still on. That's when I knew something was wrong. I called the building manager. She had a spare key. When she opened his door, she screamed. Harold was on the living room floor, tied up, bruised, face swollen. When I sealed shut, there were marks on his wrists, tight, red grooves like he'd been restrained for hours. And worse, blood on the floor. Smears. Handprints. Someone had broken in. Someone had tortured him. Right next door. And I never heard a thing. The police said it was likely a robbery. Whoever did it waited until the lights went out. They cut the power to his back window. Knew where he kept his valuables. Knew he lived alone. Maybe even knew his routine. They beat him until he gave them what they wanted. But the terrifying part? They said he'd been trying to get someone's attention. Banging on the wall. Knocking on the floor. He'd been alive for hours before they left him there. And I heard it. I heard it. The guilt is the part that haunts me. Because I was right there. I could have done something. Called. Knocked. Investigated. But I didn't. Because it was easier to believe it was nothing. Harold survived. But barely. He moved out not long after. I never saw him again. Sometimes, I wonder if he blames me. Worse, sometimes I think he doesn't. That he understands. And that makes it worse. Now, when I hear a strange noise, I always check. Because the next knock might not be nothing. It might be someone's last. You never really know what's happening behind the wall next to yours. Until it's too late to listen. Some predators don't lurk in shadows. They water their plants at noon. They wave good morning. They smile with all their teeth. And you never see the monster until it's standing in your hallway. I was 8 years old when my mom and I moved into the Parkridge apartments. Just the two of us, me and her, starting fresh after my dad bailed for someone else in a new zip code. We didn't have much, but the second floor unit was clean, affordable, and just close enough to my school that I could walk if my mom's shift ran late. I remember the first day we moved in. The carpet had that weird stiffness of a rushed cleaning job, and the hallway smelled like air freshener and something underneath it, something musty, like a room that hadn't been opened in a long time. That first night, we met Mr. Landers. He lived in the apartment across the hall. He was in his 30s, with tidy brown hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and pressed khakis that never seemed to wrinkle. He held a grocery bag in one hand and waved with the other. "Welcome," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. My mom smiled back. She was polite like that, always giving people a fair shake. I remember that he crouched slightly to talk to me, like I was a toddler. "And who's this?" he asked. I told him my name. He repeated it, like he wanted to memorize the way it sounded. Then he said, "You look like a quiet girl." "That's good." I didn't say anything. I didn't like how he looked at me. Not scared. Not even uncomfortable. Just cold. Like he wasn't looking at me, but through me. Still, Mr. Landers became a regular part of our routine. He was always there, somehow. Watering his plants. Sweeping his doormat. Pretending to be surprised when we opened our door at the same time as him almost daily. Funny timing, he'd say. One time, he gave my mom a potted fern. Another time, he handed me a wrapped caramel candy. I took it because I was taught to be polite. My mom was flattered. "He's just lonely," she said when I told her I didn't like him. "Probably doesn't have anyone. Just being friendly." I didn't push it. Because what do you say when your gut knows something your mind can't explain? It got worse in late fall. My mom started picking up extra night shifts at the diner, holiday rush hours. She didn't want to leave me alone, but I convinced her I'd be fine with Jessie, a teenage neighbor from the first floor who sometimes babysat me. One night, Jessie called last minute and said she couldn't make it. My mom was frazzled, hair halfway up, keys in hand. I told her I'd be fine. "I'll just leave the TV on and eat popcorn," I said. "I'm 8. I'm not a baby." She hesitated, kissed my forehead, and said, "You don't open the door. Not for anyone. I'm only a phone call away." I nodded. I locked the door behind her. Or at least, I thought I did. That night, I made popcorn and watched cartoons until I started nodding off. Around 10:30, I turned off the TV, brushed my teeth, and curled up under my blanket with my stuffed rabbit, Leo. I remember waking up from a deep, heavy sleep. The kind of sleep that leaves you disoriented. It was dark. Our hallway light was still on, casting a yellow sliver across my floor through the cracked bedroom door. Something felt wrong. There was no sound. Not the fridge. Not the ticking wall clock. Not even the wind. Then I saw a shadow move past the hallway light. Slow. Deliberate. I held my breath. At first, I thought it was my mom. Maybe she came home early. Maybe Jessie changed her mind and checked in. But then, I heard it. Soft breathing. Like someone trying not to be heard. A figure stepped into view at the doorway. Not all the way in, just enough for the light to catch the outline. It was a man. Naked. Except for a pair of white athletic socks. He didn't move, just stood there, watching me. I froze. My heart was hammering so loud I thought he might hear it. He tilted his head, just a little. Then he whispered, "I just wanted to see you sleep." That voice. I knew that voice. Mr. Landers. I don't remember deciding to move. I just remember suddenly being out of bed, slamming my bedroom door shut, locking it with trembling fingers. Then silence. I backed into the corner, behind my toy chest, clutching Leo to my chest. Minutes passed. I thought he'd try the door, try the window, break something. But he didn't. Nothing. Just silence. I don't know how long I stayed there. Eventually, I crawled to the phone in my mom's room and called her work. Screaming. Rambling. She got home in minutes, bursting through the door with 2 coworkers behind her. He was gone by then, but he'd left the front door unlocked. The police came, took statements. He was arrested the next day at his job. They found duct tape in his car, zip ties, a small digital camera, and worse, his journal. He'd been watching me for weeks. He wrote about what I wore, what I ate, when my mom left, and how long she was gone. There were notes about Jesse, about other kids. He'd never been arrested before. He said it was just a misunderstanding. They charged him with trespassing, unlawful entry, and attempted child endangerment. But nothing really stuck. No priors. Nothing technically happened. He did a year in county. That's it. We moved out the next week. My mom cried as she packed. She never forgave herself. And I never slept with my door open again. Even now, decades later, I check every lock 3 times. I still wake up to check the hallway, just in case. Because I'll never forget the feeling of seeing him standing there. The white socks. The way he looked at me like I was already his. It wasn't the darkness that scared me. It was how quietly the monster moved inside it. It started with a tap. Just 3 little taps on my bedroom window at 4:13 a.m. And from that moment forward, I never looked at my neighborhood or my privacy the same way again. I moved into the apartment in late October. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. A 1-bedroom on the ground floor of a weathered 3-story building in the older part of town. The kind of neighborhood where cracked sidewalks buckled under overgrown roots and streetlights flickered more often than not. Still, it felt like freedom. Fresh start. Quiet nights. I liked the solitude. I'd grown up in a house full of yelling, where every wall was paper thin and every door got slammed at least once a day. So when I moved out, I craved quiet. I found it in apartment 1A, right at the corner of the building, tucked behind overgrown hedges and facing the parking lot. The rent was cheap. That should have been my first warning. The first month was uneventful. I unpacked, got into my routine, worked 9 to 5, took long evening walks, and made friends with my upstairs neighbor, Mike. He was in his early 40s, a night shift nurse, kind of gruff but with a dry sense of humor. He lived directly above me in 2A and would occasionally leave a plate of leftovers outside my door. "You look like you eat cereal for dinner," he once said, and I didn't correct him. It was comforting, knowing he was up there. Because on the ground floor, you start to notice things, like how many people can see into your windows, how easily your curtains glow when a car passes, how thin the glass feels when the wind picks up. I started keeping the blinds closed all the time. Still, I never felt unsafe. Until the night someone tapped on my bedroom window. I'll never forget the time. 4:13 a.m. I had gone to bed just after midnight, exhausted. I'd been tossing and turning, one of those nights where your thoughts won't shut up, when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Soft, almost polite. I froze. My bedroom window faced the back alley, behind the building. There was no reason for anyone to be there. No path, no sidewalk, just gravel, weeds, and the dumpster. Tap, tap, tap. This time, a little harder, more deliberate. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. The tapping stopped. I told myself it was a tree branch, even though I knew there weren't any trees on that side of the building. I convinced myself it was a bird, a raccoon, anything but a person. Eventually, the sun came up, and I chalked it up to half sleep and paranoia. But that day, I bought a small motion sensor light and stuck it outside the bedroom window, just in case. 2 nights later, I woke up again at almost the exact same time, for 11 a.m. But this time, it wasn't tapping. It was whispering, low, muffled, impossible to understand. I sat up in bed, heart already racing. The motion light didn't turn on, but I could see the outline of a shape behind the curtain. Someone was standing there. Not knocking. Not moving. Just watching. I stayed still, praying they didn't try to open the window. After what felt like forever, the figure backed away, slowly, and vanished. I ran upstairs to Mike's apartment the next morning and knocked until he opened the door in his scrubs. I told him everything. To his credit, he didn't brush me off. Instead, he installed a second sensor light outside for me and offered to check the alley when he got home from work. Probably just some drunk, he said. Still, keep your phone close. For a week, nothing happened. Then, one night, I was getting ready for bed when I realized the motion light wasn't on. I peeked out the curtain, just a sliver, and saw the bulb had been smashed. The fixture hung by a thread, wires exposed, glass scattered below. And on the window itself, a smudge. A long, greasy streak across the bottom half of the glass, like someone had pressed their forehead against it. I didn't sleep that night. I filed a police report. The officer was polite but dismissive. No break-in, no damage. Just suspicious activity. I knew how it sounded. A tap, a shadow, a feeling. But I couldn't shake the thought that whoever it was, they knew my routine. They were waiting. 2 nights later, I found out what they were waiting for. It was early morning again. Quiet. Still. Then I heard it. Not from the window this time, but from the back door. The knob was turning slowly, like someone trying not to make noise. I grabbed my phone and dialed Mike before I even looked through the peephole. He didn't answer. I peeked. No one. Then I turned toward the bedroom and saw a silhouette at the window again. They were back. But now, they weren't alone. There were 2 figures. One crouched. One standing. The crouching one tapped. 3 times. The standing one lifted something. I couldn't see what. That's when Mike's door upstairs slammed open. Heavy footsteps pounded above me, then down the stairs, then outside. Shouting. Glass shattering. Then tires screeching. By the time I opened the door, Mike was already chasing a red car down the alley with a bat in hand, barefoot and yelling. They took off when they heard me, he shouted. 2 of them. One was trying to cut the screen. Other had a crowbar. He was out of breath, wild-eyed. Called the cops. They're coming. The police arrived. Took statements. Dusted for prints. But the men were gone. And the only thing they left behind was a small metal object near the dumpster. A lockpick. Wrapped in duct tape, with a symbol scratched into the handle. It looked like an eye. I moved out 2 weeks later. Mike helped me pack. I haven't seen him since, but I think about him often. He probably saved my life. And I still wonder how many nights they stood at that window, waiting, learning, deciding. Now, when I hear tapping on glass, I don't check, because the next time, they might not knock. February 2nd. It started with a welcome mat, then a smile, a wave, a small gift. And by the time I realized my neighbor Greg wasn't just being friendly, it was too late to stop what he'd already begun. The breakup hit hard. I had spent 4 years building a life with someone who, overnight, decided they needed to find themselves. I didn't fight it. I packed my stuff, drained my savings, and signed the lease on a little duplex 30 minutes outside the city. It was peaceful, quiet in that way that feels both calming and a little too empty. My half of the duplex faced a narrow gravel driveway and a curtain of trees beyond the backyard. The other half, Unit B, was home to a man named Greg. The landlord described him as a harmless retiree. Sweet guy, she told me. He even trims the bushes between the units. She wasn't wrong. At first, Greg seemed harmless. In fact, he seemed invisible. For the first week, I barely saw him. Just the occasional flicker of a TV glow behind his blinds at night. Then, one morning, I opened my front door and stepped onto a brand new welcome mat. Bright, floral, rubber-backed. Not mine. Tucked underneath was a little card. Thought this might brighten things up. Greg. I hesitated, but smiled. After all, what was a mat? It was thoughtful. Kind. I wrote a thank you note, slipped it under his door. That afternoon, I got a knock. Greg was tall and soft-spoken, probably in his mid-60s. Slightly hunched, with white hair combed perfectly back and a pair of thick bifocals that made his pale eyes seem larger than they really were. He wore a pressed polo and old khakis, almost like a uniform. He handed me a loaf of banana bread. You just looked like you could use some cheering up, he said, smiling. I thanked him. We spoke for less than a minute. He never stopped smiling. Over the next couple of weeks, I started seeing Greg more often. He always seemed to be outside when I was leaving or coming home. He'd wave from his porch with a coffee in hand, comment on the weather, compliment my dress, offer to bring my trash cans up from the curb, and the gifts continued. A coffee mug with daisies on it, a little glass bird ornament, once a partially used candle that smelled like cinnamon rolls. It reminded me of Sunday mornings, he said. The strangest part? He never asked for anything in return, and that's what made me drop my guard. Then things shifted. It was subtle at first, almost unnoticeable. The notes became more personal. One read, "You left your porch light on until 2:17 a.m. I was worried you couldn't sleep." Another said, "You looked sad after that phone call. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm just a knock away." That last one scared me. I'd had the blinds down. I'd been in the living room, phone pressed to my ear, crying silently after a call with my ex. How could he have seen me? Unless... I started checking my windows more often. I began shutting the blinds before dusk. I installed a basic camera doorbell and kept pepper spray in my purse. But part of me still clung to the idea that Greg was just awkward, lonely, a little too invested, sure, but not dangerous. Then one Friday evening, I came home late from work and found a package waiting at my door. No label, no stamp. Inside was a small, wooden picture frame, and inside it, a photo of me, sitting on my front steps, reading a book, unaware, alone. I dropped it, rushed inside, locked the door. My breath came in short bursts as I scanned the blinds, listening for footsteps. Nothing. The next day, I didn't leave the house. That night, I called the police. They came, took a statement. I showed them the photo. They asked if Greg had ever made a direct threat. I said no. They knocked on his door anyway. He answered politely, in his usual press shirt and calm tone. Said he hadn't seen anything. Didn't know what photo I was talking about. He looked directly at me and said, "I hope she feels safe soon." They thanked him and left. No search. No warning. Just a report number and a let us know if anything else happens. I bought new locks the next morning. I started keeping a kitchen knife in my bedside drawer. I stopped sleeping through the night. Then, 3 days later, I found something wedged into my back gate. A folded note, soaked slightly from dew. "You looked beautiful in blue yesterday. That color makes your eyes brighter." I had been wearing blue, only for an hour, when I took a walk through the woods behind the duplex alone. That path was hidden. No one would have seen me unless they were following. I went to the landlord, begged her to let me break the lease. She was sympathetic but hesitant. Greg's never caused problems before, she said. He even gave me a wedding gift 10 years ago. I offered to forfeit my deposit. She agreed, but I needed 2 weeks to find a new place. I figured I could survive 2 weeks. I was wrong. It was the second to last night. I had packed most of my things, slept with the lights on, avoided Greg entirely. Around 2:45 a.m., I was jolted awake by a click, then another. The sound of my backsliding door unlocking. I grabbed the knife, crept into the hallway, and then a whisper. My name, whispered like a prayer from the living room. I held my breath, gripped the knife so tight my knuckles ached. When I peeked around the corner, the door was open an inch, just enough for someone to have slipped inside. I ran for the front door, flung it open, and nearly screamed. Greg was crouching on the porch, in a hoodie, holding a single rose. He looked up at me with those wide, wet eyes. "I just wanted to say goodbye," he whispered. I slammed the door, called the cops. He was gone before they arrived. But this time, they searched his unit, and they found everything. Photos, notes, a notebook filled with detailed logs, my routines, what time I left for work, how long I showered, who I called. And worst of all, keys. To my place. To both locks. They never found out how he made them. He claimed he just wanted to be close, that he was helping me feel less alone. He served less than a year for trespassing and stalking. Moved to a different county. I moved again, farther away. Changed my number. Made everything private. But sometimes, when I wake up late at night, I swear I can hear someone whisper my name through the wall. And once, just once, I found a fresh welcome mat outside my door. There was no note, but I didn't need one. Some neighbors wave from across the street. Others never leave your front porch. Everyone warned me that moving to Japan alone would be isolating. They said I'd feel homesick, maybe overwhelmed. But no one warned me what it's like when someone starts watching you and won't stop. I moved to Tokyo in 2018 as part of a study abroad program. I was 24 at the time, enrolled in a language immersion track through my university back home. It was supposed to be the best year of my life. A chance to reset, to see the world differently, to escape some things I wasn't ready to deal with yet. At first, it was everything I'd hoped for. My small apartment was in a quiet neighborhood just outside Sijanami, clean streets, soft lights, vending machines on every corner. The building itself was old but well kept, 3 floors, with my unit on the second. The first week felt like a dream. I'd walk to the station in the mornings, headphones in, passing the same group of school kids every day. After class, I'd stop by the konbini for dinner, rice balls, iced tea, and maybe a sweet roll if I was feeling brave. Everything felt peaceful, ordered, safe, until I met the woman upstairs. I first noticed her during my second week there. I was taking out my trash early in the morning when I saw her standing on the 3rd floor balcony, directly above mine. She wasn't moving, just standing there in a loose gray sweater and slippers, her black hair hanging flat against her shoulders. She stared straight ahead, not at me, but past me, toward the street. I nodded a polite hello. She didn't respond, didn't blink, didn't move. I didn't think much of it at first. Language barrier, maybe. Cultural distance. Or maybe she was just off. But then it started happening every morning. Every single day at 7 a.m., she was there. Same spot. Same clothes. Same blank expression. Always before I left for class. Always still as a statue. At first, it was mildly unsettling. By the 3rd week, it felt like a ritual. Like she was waiting for something. For me. One day, I left late. Around 8:30. And she was still there. Only this time, her eyes followed me as I stepped onto the balcony. Not subtly, not politely. She tracked me. I waved. Tried to smile. Ohei gozaimasu. I called up. She didn't move. Her mouth opened slightly, like she was about to speak. Then, nothing. Just silence. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her. When I got back from class, I stood on my balcony for a while, staring up at hers. Empty. Dark. But something didn't sit right. I kept glancing over my shoulder as I ate dinner, as I brushed my teeth. Every creak in the apartment made my shoulders tense. Just before bed, I pulled the curtain back one last time. And she was there. Not on the balcony. Inside. Behind her window. Watching. That was the first time I truly felt afraid. A week passed with more the same. She was always there. Not every night, but often enough that I started losing sleep. And then came the knocking. It started just after 2 a.m. 3 soft knocks on my front door. I sat up in bed, heart hammering, unsure if I dreamed it. Then again, 3 knocks. I got up, crept to the peephole. No one. The hallway light flickered, but no one was there. The next morning, I asked my landlord about the woman in 3C. He raised his eyebrows. 3C? Yes, I said. The woman upstairs. Long hair, gray sweater. She's always on the balcony. He frowned. There's no one in 3C. That unit's been empty for almost a year. My stomach dropped. I tried to argue, describe her face, her routine, but he just shook his head. If someone is there, he said, they are not on the lease. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up on my balcony with my phone in hand, trying to get a photo of her. But she didn't appear. Not until 3 a.m. Knock, knock, knock. Not from the front door this time. From the sliding balcony door. I turned, slowly. She was standing on my balcony. No shoes. Her face was pale, too pale, almost glowing in the moonlight. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. I backed away, locked the door. She stood there for over an hour, watching. The police came the next day. Polite, patient, skeptical. They searched the building, including Unit 3C. No signs of anyone. No belongings. No furniture. Nothing. But when they opened the balcony door, they found something odd. A single slipper. Wet. Facing the ledge. They told me it was probably a break-in. A vagrant maybe. Told me to lock up. Be careful. But I knew better. This wasn't random. She knew me. She was focused on me. And I didn't know why. I started sleeping with the lights on. Stopped using the balcony. Every time I walked to the station, I felt her eyes. Even when the windows were dark. Even when the balcony was empty. She was there. Somewhere. The final night, it all came to a head. I just finished brushing my teeth when the doorbell rang. 3:07 a.m. I froze. Then, knock, knock, knock. I looked through the peephole. No one. I stepped back. Then, tap, tap, tap on the bathroom window. I turned, terrified. She was hanging over the side of the third-floor balcony, bent impossibly far, face inches from the glass. Her eyes were wild, her mouth open. And then, finally, I heard her voice. "You're in my apartment. I left that morning. Didn't wait for daylight. Didn't say goodbye. I switched dorms. Transferred to a different part of the city. Told everyone it was just too noisy. I never told them about her. Never told anyone what she said. Because the scariest part wasn't that she claimed it was her apartment. The scariest part is that when I checked the building records, she did live there. 5 years ago. She died in 3C. Jumped from the balcony. I sleep on the top floor now. No one above me. But I still close my curtains every night, because sometimes the eyes are still there.